Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about lunar medicine. So lunar medicine is one of the pathways of feminine medicine, this lineage of the medicine of the feminine, and it includes the lunar mysteries and the connection of the moon, the power it has over us, the activations that are happening on a daily basis with the moon. And in ancient times, the moon was seen by our own ancestral mothers, the medicine women, the oracles, the seers, the wisdom keepers, and the healers as a guide. And they would see the moon and they arranged different events around different moon cycles and different days of the moon because as they observed the interrelationship of the moon with the community, with the people, they learned a lot of different things about the moon. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the main pieces around what the medicine of the moon has for us and how we can reclaim this truth, this pathway as a way to embody our deepest self, embody different aspects of our being, heal some of the wounds of separation that we've inherited, and use it as a daily cultivation, which I'll be talking a little bit about at the end of this video. So we can start with understanding that when we look at the moon and we understand the cycles of the moon really has a 30-day cycle. It's 29 and a half days. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to call it a 30-day cycle. And in that cycle, there's a waxing moon cycle that lasts about 15 days. And then there's a waning moon cycle, which lasts about another 15 days. So from day one that we see the moon, day one all the way to day 15 is where we see the lunar full moon. And this is the waxing phase where the moon, we see the moon every day growing in her light and actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the sky. She's not really getting bigger, but the light that's reflected off of the moon is increasing. This is the waxing cycle of the moon. And then we have from day 15 from the full moon back all the way to day 30, which begins a new cycle at day 1, we see the light of the moon, how she appears to us here on Earth. She appears to be getting less and less and less light, showing less and less and less light. So she appears to be getting smaller every day. And this is called the waning cycle of the moon. So one of the things that the moon teaches us is about rhythm, about this rhythm of expansion and contraction, where it's not linear, one thing after the other, but rather a spiral, rather a cycle. So it teaches us cyclical rhythms. And in these cyclical rhythms, there's, like I said, expansion and contraction. And you really can't have one without the other. And in our dominant culture, we have been trained and indoctrinated to work on this kind of linear mentality where one thing comes after the other, comes after the other. And we're also just wanting to grow and do and produce and produce and produce. And so this idea of the contraction aspect of the cycle, the descent, the moving into darkness, the release of the expansion, and then kind of like the more yin aspect is not as celebrated in our culture. Our culture is really valued at wanting to do more, wanting to produce more, kind of having this linear um, operating mechanism, if you want to say it that way. And so the moon teaches us in many ways around about rhythm. And this rhythm, of course, can be found within our own bodies, within our own menstrual cycle, which also has a 28-day cycle, 29-day cycle, 27-day cycle for women that are bleeding. And so the moon is teaching us that about the cosmos, about the earth, because also, of course, we know that the seasons are cycles. And so it's teaching us a cyclical way of living, of being in cyclical time, and of honoring not just the expansion, but also the contraction. And in this, of course, we come to the cycle of death and rebirth and regeneration, so that every birth is really a growth out of something that has died. And that's the process. This rebirth, death cycle is the process that we experience here on Earth. And and allowing ourselves, for example, on the emotional level, to not just seek those emotions that allow us to feel good and that bring us into joy or into expansion, but also honoring those that bring us into grief or sadness, those that don't feel as good as, of course, joy and happiness and in these expanded states, because it allows us to kind of move through the cycles. It allows us to compost and come into alchemy and transmute that which we no longer need. So, this expansion followed by this release, letting go of the waning cycle, is a really, really important piece in our understanding, in our deeper understanding, I should say, of our own healing, of our own way of living in a harmony with the cycles around us, and coming into greater relationship with those cycles. And so, in many ways, the moon brings us back into rhythm. It brings us back into harmony, not just with the forces outside of ourselves, like the moon, like the earth, like the seasons, for example, things that are also moving in this cyclical nature. But in many ways, it's also a key to how to come back into alignment with ourselves, our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health. How do we create harmony within ourselves, within our own cycles, for example, within our own bleeding, within our own emotional states? Are we giving ourselves time and space for grieving, for loss, for facing our shadow, for facing the darker aspects of our being, um, rather than just wanting to be in the expansion and in the light and in the joy? And we might have preferences, of course. Everybody wants to feel good. We all want to feel good. But the irony and the paradox is that in order to actually feel good, we need to also be willing to face that which doesn't feel good, because it is in the actual expansion of that and facing that and composting that, which would be the waning cycle of the moon, right? What the waning cycle teaches us. In order, allowing ourselves to be with that, we actually kind of lighten the load. This is where transmutation and alchemy happens. And so in many ways, the moon is teaching us that, and it taught our ancestors. This is part of the mysteries of the moon. So another really important mystery to the moon and teaching of the moon is that the moon expands for, like I said, 15 days, and then it starts to decrease in its light for the following 15 days. And at the end, right before that death and that rebirth point, that regeneration point, it actually disappears. And so for our ancestors, it would seem to disappear in the sky. And of course, still today, it disappears in the sky. Um, we might be able to see it, see kind of like the silhouette on the horizon on the dark moon. And so about day 27 of the moon cycle, it disappears into darkness. And those 3 days of darkness is very, very meaningful because in many ways it speaks to the mystery. It speaks to the continuity of life, but it speaks to also this place of the unknown, this place where we can kind of come into our being and let go and release all of the ideas of who we are and be in that union with the unknown, with the primordial essence of life, trusting something we can't quite see, but yet is there. So it's speaking about our soul, it's speaking about our spirit, it's speaking about the great unknown mystery of the divine, of source, of great mother, the living matrix that we're in, the unseen world that we don't see, but yet it's there. The matrix is there. It's within each one of us. It's within all of creation. And so this 3 days of darkness that we experience with each moon cycle is really about the relationship with the unknown and with the mystery and with life itself. It's teaching us how to be, how to trust, how to deepen. And it's a very sacred time of the moon cycle that we call the dark moon time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the cycles of the moon, the actual cycles, so that we can understand how we are affected individually and personally each day. So the cycle of the moon, again, is from day 1 through day 30. And it begins with the first day of the moon, which we also call the new moon. Then it's the waxing phase, and we have certain stages that we are very familiar with, like the waxing crescent, where the moon is just a little crescent, which is like days 2, 3, 4, all the way to day 7, which is the waxing first quarter moon. And we see the moon in the sky half lit, right? The circle, we see the right side lit up, all light. So we're really seeing a half, but because if you see the moon as a sphere, it's a quarter. Only the quarter is lit up if you compare it to the whole moon. Then 7 days after that, we have the full moon, day 15. So each day of the waxing cycle, the expansion cycle, the moon is increasing and showing us a little bit more light, little bit more light, little bit more light until day 15, which the whole side of the moon that's facing us here on Earth shows to be lit up completely. Then from there, it starts to it's all lit up. And then from the right side again, the darkness, the shadow comes in. Day 16, 17, 18. So we have the waning gibbous. Then we have the waning third quarter moon, which is the last quarter, also known, which is day 21. Then it increases and increases until you see just a little sliver again, another crescent moving into the dark moon. Day 27, 28, 29, completely dark. New moon, completely dark. And then again, the cycle begins all over again, day 1 through 15, 15 through 30. So as this is happening in the sky, each day the moon correlates with one of our 7 gateways. We have 7 gateways, which we also know as chakras, starting with the root, the sacral, the solar, the heart, the throat, third eye, and our crown. And each day, the moon cycle, the day of the moon day, I should say, activates one of those gateways. And it begins with day 1 on our root, slowly, slowly coming up the gateways, these portals within our being, and reaching the crown at the full moon. So it comes up through the front of our body, through the yin side of our body, activating. And then from the day 15, full moon, so the second half, the descending, it starts to activate the back of those gateways, descending, moving us into this descent, all the way down into the root at day 29, 30, new moon, back at the root. And so it activates this cycle, which is also called a microcosmic cycle. And each of these gateways has a different particular area of consciousness that it affects within us. And as we're being activated through the waxing stage of the moon, and it activates the front of our body, which is the embodiment phase. It's the part of the lunar phase that we're actually growing in light. We're embodying, we're growing these various aspects of ourselves. And then from the day 15 to day 30, waning, we're actually releasing, letting go, integrating. We're in the descent stage, which is day 15 through day 30. And so with this understanding, we get to see, for example, when it's activating our heart portal, our heart gateway on the waxing where it's growing, right? Where the moon phase is growing. So this would be day 7, for example. And day 7 of the moon cycle affects our heart and affects the consciousness of this heart gateway, which is all about rooted in love. Who we are as love, who we are as this love medicine that you carry in your soul, right? So these activates also our soul imprints, if you may. And so we can feel that activation and we can align with that activation to support our ability to expand in love, during those days that our heart is being affected. Many times we're already affected, and we actually notice once we know the cycles, once we understand where the cycle is hitting, and once we're following the rhythm, we start to see the correlation between how we feel, what we're thinking, the actions that we're taking, and where we're being activated, where the light of the moon is supporting us, and where we can actually challenge ourselves and work and release whatever might be coming up for us so that we can have a deeper relationship with ourselves, with the medicine that we carry, with our soul qualities that are being activated. And not only that, but also our ability to release the wounding, the imprints that we've inherited, the thought forms, the mental constructs, and the things that might be operating even unconsciously, our unworthiness, our shame, our fears. And so in this journey, working with the lunar medicine, we can actually notice and be supported by where the moon is at any given moment. And this is a really, really powerful tool. And in feminine medicine, what I've done is put all of these elements together, using and becoming aware and awakening to the power that the moon has over us, and also the power of these activations on a daily basis, and actually putting it together so that we can attune. We can also engage with this wisdom to help us heal, to help us embody the medicine that we're carrying, to help us awaken to greater truths and develop that relationship, greater intimacy with ourselves. And so the breath work, the feminine medicine lineage breath work, these cultivations allow you to connect with where the moon is every day, day 1, day 2, day 3. Know the framework so that we know where it's hitting, and then tuning in a certain way, using breath work. Certain breaths are used for each of the gateways to activate that particular consciousness and field of consciousness that is correlated in that area. Now, it's not just the field of consciousness, it also affects our biology. And like I said, it includes consciousness will affect everything. So biology, our mental, the thoughts that we're thinking, the thoughts that are unconscious, the narratives, our emotional states, and also emotions and traumas that we haven't processed. A lot of times they'd be kind of surfacing. And when you look at where the moon is that day and what day it is, it's like, oh, that of course that makes sense. On days that the moon might be activating your throat, our throat gateway, there might be days where we feel bolder to speak things that perhaps in the past we haven't been able to. Or on the waning side, we might become aware of things that we want to say, and perhaps the narratives that have kept us quiet, and allow us the courage to move through those. So all of that unprocessed material might be rising within us. And so it starts to kind of really make sense, and you start to understand how the living matrix all around you, and in particular, the cycle of the moon is supporting you, supporting your growth, supporting our presence of just being, expanding the truth of who we are. So that is one of the pathways of feminine medicine. And it is a very powerful pathway because this can be and is a practice that we do every day with breath, with sound. So each of the gateways has a particular sound, and the sound will start to move. It starts to activate, but also release, transmute the narratives, and also activate our soul qualities. So it does both. It releases and transforms what's gotten in the way of the actual qualities of our soul to expand and be integrated into our being, be integrated into our daily living of who we are. So breath, sound, there's particular word affirmations for each. And there's particular, we could even say to sit with them and also be able to uh, journal or be present with what are the narratives, what are the unconscious pieces that we're holding in any given gateway. And so I wanted to really talk about the power of lunar medicine and the mysteries, because this is a part of activating who we are and staying in alignment, staying with the cyclical rhythm that in many ways it's affecting us. So all we're doing is awakening to that and then like kind of plugging into our belonging in this living matrix rather than it affecting us, but feeling disconnected or not even being present with what's moving and this whole part of ourselves dormant and feeling powerless. So this actually allows you to be able to feel and have more power, but sacred power and agency because you understand and you're kind of noticing how we fit in to the cycles and the lunar cycle specifically. So thank you. And if you want to learn more specifics about the lunar medicine breathwork cultivations, we're going to be doing a 30-day program because we're going to walk people right through the 30 days and sharing all of this particular framework and the possibilities so that it can be used as a daily practice of the feminine. So you can check out more information in the notes, more information on Feminine Medicine Institute. And I want to wish you many, many blessings today. Thank you.